Welcome from Lackland Air Force Base.
Yay. Good. All right, I have 12 o'clock, so we're gonna end that poll, and you can close that out by just hitting the X at the top. And then just make sure in that chat box, if you do that drop down box and have everyone checked off. And that way, if you have lots of great things to share, which we hope you do, everyone will be able to see that. So welcome everyone. And thank you for joining us for our webinar today, Understanding Your Students' Procrastination. We would like to start by thanking the Navy Child and Youth Programs for making today's webinar possible. We'd like to also thank you for taking that initial poll and for putting your information in the chat box. We see that we do have professionals joining us today. Thank you so much for being here. We always welcome professionals who work with military-connected students to our parent trainings, and we think that you will find the information and tips we present useful, but please keep in mind that our MSEC parent webinars have been designed with parents as the target audience. And before we introduce ourselves, we want to share a little bit about MSEC and our mission. The Military Child Education Coalition, MSEC, is a nonprofit organization established over 25 years ago, and our mission is to support all military-connected children by educating, advocating, and collaborating to resolve educational challenges associated with the military lifestyle. In 2005, MSEC formalized support for military-connected parents so that they may feel empowered, informed, and proactive in supporting their military-connected children's educational journey. We strive to deliver informative and interactive webinars that address academic, social, and emotional issues associated with the military family lifestyle. And our vision is for every military-connected child to be college, work, and life ready. So good morning or good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marie McGarry, and I am joining you from Northern Virginia, just outside of DC. I am an active duty Army spouse of 23 years and a proud mom to 2 military-connected teens. I have a son that is a freshman at Virginia Commonwealth University, VCU, here in Richmond, Virginia, and my daughter is a senior and has almost made her final decision about where she's going to school next year. I've been with MSEC since 2017. I started with parent support programs out in El Paso, Texas, and currently work, in addition to the webinar team, with professional development and student trainings. And I'm joined today by my friend and colleague, Michelle Bashir. Michelle.
Hi, thank you. And I'm joining you today from Madison, Alabama, which is a city just outside of Huntsville, Alabama. You may know it as the Rocket City. They have fun space camp here, lots of exciting things. Before my husband retired after just a few months shy of 30 years, we moved over 14 times. We also have raised 2 incredible military-connected children. Each of them went to school. I think one had 6 different schools, one had 7 different schools between K and 12. So as Marie knows, it's just part of the life. And I've also enjoyed working with MSEC as a parent educator since 2017. So we started right around the same time. So before we move on, just a couple administrative announcements. At the end of the webinar, we would like to invite you and encourage you to take our survey about today's presentation. We would really appreciate if you took the time, a couple minutes required to give us your feedback. It is a key method that we use to let our funders know what we're doing, but it also lets us know if we need to adjust something so that we can continue to offer the very best training opportunities for you, our military-connected parents, and some of the professionals that we work with. You will see a chat box on the screen where you can ask questions, and as you've also already put some things in there, so please feel free to utilize this feature in Zoom. And as always, we encourage parents and professionals to share resources, but please note that MSEC does not allow advertising for paid services during our parent webinars. You should see a downloadable resource. Thank you, Marie, in the chat box. This contains resources and information that's relating to today's webinar. So all of the links that we're sharing, general information that we're sharing today is in that resource. Please know that if you are listening on your phone, you won't be able to download those, but if you private message us, your email will send those out later today. We are recording this, and please know that you can always go back and view it again, or if maybe you want to share it, or perhaps you have technical difficulties, it will be available. All right, well, let's look at our learning objectives. Procrastination can lead to a lot of homework battles at home, right? Some late night studying sometimes, some tough mornings because of late nights, and so lots of missed opportunities. But by the end of this webinar, we hope that you will be able to recognize some of the common reasons for procrastination. We'll explore how to help stop procrastination, and then we'll share tips how to keep your kids motivated. So we do have one question for you. Let us know one activity where you tend to procrastinate. And Marie and I will also share. I will let you know that I'd love to get those warm clothes out of the dryer and fold them because I know they won't wrinkle as much, but then they lay in the basket for a while. So that's where I tend to procrastinate with actually putting them away. Filling out paperwork. There you go, laundry. Christian's with Marie.
Paperwork. I think, I don't know, are we at the point where everyone's procrastinating about putting their stuff together for taxes, right? Taxes are quickly approaching. I know when Michelle and I were talking about this webinar, I said, the more things I have to do is when I find myself procrastinating. And we'll talk a little bit about that feeling of being overwhelmed and not knowing where to start. So great. Thanks for sharing those. So we have thought about some situations where we as adults procrastinate. So as we talk about these next couple of slides, I want you to think of a situation where your child or a child that you work with might procrastinate, maybe around the areas of chores or homework. And then maybe consider how sometimes there are other factors that might impact that situation and lead to procrastination. So for some kiddos, procrastination might be a coping mechanism. We know that our military connected children move frequently and have to say goodbye to friends and familiar places. So sometimes procrastinating and dragging that out, it can help them to avoid some of those unpleasant emotions. They might not want to move. So maybe if you'd ask them, to clean out their toy bin or clothing in anticipation for a move and they still haven't done it. So maybe it's not so much that they don't want to do the activity, but that activity is associated with another move for them. Perfectionism. Sometimes kids procrastinate because they're afraid of making a mistake or doing something wrong or not well. They feel that they are not going to meet maybe their personal standards, or they think that parents or other people expect them to be perfect. They're afraid of failing sometimes, so they might put off doing certain tasks. So, for example, a child who might put off practicing the piano or an instrument, it might be because they're afraid that they can't play that certain note that they know they need to for the upcoming concert. Some students might procrastinate because they think if they don't get an A on that essay, then their grade point average will be ruined. And so they become so stressed about writing that essay that they keep putting it off. Sometimes children can become frustrated because they have realized that they don't have the skills or they're not quite clear about what they're supposed to accomplish. And so the task maybe takes more time and effort than they're willing to spend at that point. And so they get frustrated because they thought it was going to be something they could easily or quickly do. They might start that task and reach that frustration level fairly quickly and then move on so it's not completed. And sometimes kids, like I am sometimes, they feel overwhelmed and they're frustrated because they don't know where to start. So some are those reasons might be some of what's happening behind that procrastination. Some other reasons for procrastination is that kids might not see the value or the relevance of that particular activity. They might think, what's the point of doing this? What's the point of putting away my clothes? I'm just going to wear them the next day anyway. And that can also be tied in if there hasn't been a consequence if the child doesn't complete that task or that chore. They know that if they wait long enough, that mom or dad or maybe an older brother or sister will do it for them. So they have learned that procrastination is a good way to avoid doing what they don't like to do. So that consequences piece we'll talk a little bit more about later, and how that's an important part of maybe to alleviate or eliminate some of that procrastination. Some kids view tasks as boring, right? Playing a game, chatting with friends, that is much more interesting than doing homework or cleaning their room. So if they can't find the motivation or the self-discipline to tackle that less desirable task first, then all of us, kids and adults, will tend to procrastinate. Sometimes kids have difficulty managing their time, and so they underestimate how long something is going to take them to do. So that time factor, and children of different ages, and sometimes if they have some other issues, maybe with planning or executive function, they're going to have some trouble managing their time and getting those tasks accomplished in an appropriate amount of time. So maybe they are still working on homework at 10 p.m. because they thought that homework is only going to take them 10 minutes. And they found as they got started, it was much more involved and labor intensive. Some kids really have difficulty staying focused and concentrating. And both that time management piece that I mentioned and that difficulty with concentration and focus, those are two skills that fall under executive function and self-regulation. And so Michelle is going to talk a little bit more about those two skills in particular.
Thank you, Marie. So yeah, executive function and self-regulation are skills or mental processes that help our kids to do things like plan, helps them to focus that attention on a task or something that needs to get done. It helps them remember instructions, like they may have heard you and they even responded to you, they just didn't get it, right? Didn't stick. And it also helps them to juggle many different tasks successfully. It also helps them, this executive function and self-regulation skills helps them to filter out distractions, all those squirrels running around all the time, helps them to prioritize their actions. Which task do I attack first? Helps them set and reach goals. What goals should I be setting and how do I go about reaching them? And those executive function and self-regulation skills also can help them control their impulses. So knowing how to control their impulses, their emotions, or even those little fidgets like pencil tapping activities are all included in that. Now, executive function and self-regulation skills work together, and they require 3 different types of brain function. Working memory, sometimes referred to as short-term memory, mental flexibility, which allows us to stay on task or move our attention to something else as needed and come back, and that self-control, helping set those priorities and resisting those impulsive actions. So if children are slow to develop those executive functioning skills, you can see how it can affect them. And there's a variety of ways. So often these difficulties can look like behaviors commonly associated with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. That's because children with ADHD often have difficulties with executive function skills. There could also be other reasons that a child may be struggling. When we consider the activities that the executive functioning and self-regulation skills control, we may note that children may still be developing their executive functioning skills if we're noticing some things that they do. If they're having difficulty starting and completing a task, if they're having difficulty prioritizing the tasks, if they're having difficulty following directions or that sequence of steps, or if they're adapting to changes in rules or regulations or routines, if those are difficult for them to deal with. And then Marie mentioned too that difficulty managing their time. So for more information about both executive functioning skills, so look at understood.org. They have a great article in there for you to review. Now, The good news is children can learn and build executive function skills with practice. As a parent, you can provide support to build those executive and self-regulatory skills. Parents can allow them time to learn skills that will help them to keep on task. In other words, be patient with them with this. It's not going to happen overnight, but over time, your children will learn to guide themselves, and it will require less and less of your guidance and supervision. Some children develop them a little more easily, and then of course others need just a little bit more help and support. Sometimes these executive functioning skills are delayed for different reasons. It's been found that children who have experienced trauma or stress, or they just haven't learned them from the adults around them. Environmental factors may contribute to a delay in developing these skills. Adverse experiences or environments that cause toxic stress can make it challenging for most of those kids to acquire the executive functioning skills. They have so much that they're dealing with. Now, if you suspect for any reason that your child is having difficulty with executive functioning skills, reach out to the counselor, your pediatrician, healthcare provider, and they can help you a little bit more with that. Now we're going to share a video with you about what happens when you procrastinate too much.
Most of us have procrastinated at some point in our lives, but about 1 in every 5 of us are compulsive about it. They put off tasks and chores nearly every chance they get. They're called chronic procrastinators. And it turns out this behavior does a lot more damage than you might think. We get it. Doing work is hard. But when you choose to watch TV over doing laundry or washing dishes, you've just launched an all-out battle in your brain. On one side, you have your prefrontal cortex. That's the part of your brain that sets long-term goals and regulates self-control. It's telling you that those dishes aren't going to clean themselves. And on the other side is the limbic system. It deals with pleasure, arousal, and reward. And it's telling you that washing dishes is lame, dude. You'd have a better time doing something else. So procrastination essentially puts your brain in its happy place. It feels good. That's why you do it. But of course, just because it feels good doesn't mean it's necessarily good for you. For example, several studies have found that undergraduate college students who procrastinated had a lower GPA in the latter half of the semester compared to non-procrastinators. They were also more likely to get sick based on their healthcare visits. Moreover, other studies have found that procrastinators report higher levels of guilt and anxiety when they choose to procrastinate in the first place. And if you keep it up, researchers have found that chronic procrastination is linked to low self-confidence, low energy, and depression. Overall, your quality of life will probably be worse than if you had just listened to that good old prefrontal cortex. And you may think that you just have a different workflow or you perform better under pressure. But sorry to say, there are no studies to support any benefits of chronic procrastination. Bottom line, it's unhealthy. But not all hope is lost. In fact, researchers have conducted dozens of scientific studies in search for ways to help procrastinators. What they've found time and time again is how you think about tasks can make a huge difference in how likely you are to procrastinate on them. Tasks like saving for retirement, for example, can be so abstract. There's no immediate deadline, so you can always start tomorrow. And this is the mentality that can lead you to procrastinate. Instead, make your tasks more concrete in your mind. For example, a study in 2011 discovered that people given an illustration of how they might look at retirement age were more likely to say they would save money for retirement than people without an illustration. The image was something tangible, and therefore painted a more concrete picture of their inevitable future. So whatever the task, do your health a favor and do the work. Right now. You might even enjoy that TV show even more once you get to it.
I always think that when I watch this and they talk about the fight between the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system, like that little devil and angel in all the cartoons that they used to have. One's
Right.
saying, you better do this, and the other one's like, don't listen to him. That's a big deal.
Exactly. Yeah.
Most of us have procrastination.
There we go.
I think too, that idea that, you're thinking, you're lowering your stress level if you're putting something off, or, well, I'm going to relax now and do it. I'll get to it later. But really that understanding that's actually causing more stress, right? So figuring out what maybe your child is stressed about and understanding the why behind that procrastination is really an important step in helping them to listen to that front part of their brain and get those tasks done. So one way to do that is by observing your child. So as we discussed in the first couple of slides in our webinar, there are several reasons for procrastination. So thinking about, did we move recently as a family? Might this procrastination be related to transition? It's possible that maybe procrastination is different depending on the tasks. Maybe your child puts off doing a project because of that time management piece. They think they have all the time in the world to finish it. And so maybe that's because they really haven't developed a good concept of time or project planning skills yet. And that same child might also procrastinate about cleaning up their room because it's a boring task and they haven't yet developed the self-regulation piece that, we all have to do things that are boring and that we don't like, but they're important for us to get done because we want our house to be clean. We want our room to be clean. We want to know where to be able to find things. So finding out what is happening aids in picking up those behavior patterns and looking at those patterns as to when your child is procrastinating. Sometimes it might be helpful, depending on your circumstances, to maybe keep a chart or just a little notebook for yourself or put some notes on your phone when you observe your child procrastinating and the activity that they might be procrastinating about. So once you have that understanding of why your child is procrastinating, then you can come up with some methods to help your child to avoid that procrastinating in the future, because we know that it's a behavior that we want to change. We don't want them to be dealing with this procrastination throughout their whole life. So to understand your child, you want to talk about the behavior with them openly and think about maybe there are some other reasons for prompting that behavior. So maybe having the discussion around that active listening and trying to do it without judgment, which can be hard sometimes, particularly if you've asked them 5 times that day to clean up their room, but listening to them a little bit. This seems like it's I'm having a really hard time doing that. Can I help, or is there one part that's harder than the other, or would it help maybe to start in this section? Also asking them about, what do you think a clean room looks like to you? Helping them to understand what their standards are and talking with them about what your expectations. Okay, well, that's what it sounds like for you, what a clean room looks like. Let me tell you from mom's perspective what a clean room looks like. And maybe there's a way to meet in the middle there. And then those natural consequences and letting them experience that a little bit. If they procrastinate about getting their stuff together for soccer practice the next day, and you end up leaving and the cleats are at home and you don't go back for the cleats. So maybe that practice, they have to sit out. So that's a natural consequence that you can tie back into that procrastination about getting your stuff together led to this result. So after gathering that information and that observation, you want to have that open discussion with that open and reflective listening, and also work together to set realistic, attainable expectations. You all as the parent know your child best, but maybe they have an idea of what you're expecting, and maybe it's not your expectation at all. So you want to be clear about what your expectation is and how your child can meet that expectation. So they might not be doing chores or duties because they're not really clear about what they're supposed to do. So you want to communicate clearly what is expected of them. And maybe it's a little checkoff list. So maybe your expectation is that they clean the toy room at the end of, before they go to bed, but they're not really clear about what that means. So maybe putting in just a little checklist on the door to the playroom so they can kind of see, okay, this is what the expectation is for a picked up toy room at night. And then maybe the first couple of times you will have to show your child or work with them in order to complete that task. And then we want to share with them that we all struggle at times and nobody's perfect. Maybe talk about, the laundry gets out of the dryer, but not completely folded and put away. That's something mom struggles with, or making sure I don't leave dishes in the sink, before I go to bed. And sometimes I'm really tired. I don't want to do those dishes. So having that discussion with them and letting them see that you struggle sometimes with procrastination as well. If the procrastination piece is related to school, again, you want to have that discussion with them. Maybe, what do you think as parents we expect from you at school? And maybe you might be surprised, well, I think you want me to get all A's, and that's not your expectation at all. You want them to try hard and to do their best. And so you want to put that focus maybe on the effort rather than just that grade outcome. And then collaborate together on setting some of those goals. This way you can help to manage everybody's expectations. And then you can review those goals periodically. If they attain them, you maybe can set another goal, or maybe you can adjust that goal if maybe they're still really continuing to struggle. And it's a great opportunity to reach out to that teacher too and say, hey, we know that math has been a little bit of a struggle. These are some of the things that we are working on at home and some of the goals that we have. And that way you can get support from the school, and you can also be supporting what that teacher is trying to accomplish in class as well. Excuse me. Findings from a study on procrastination suggest that it does matter how we phrase the directions about tasks that have to be done. There's a great article by Dr. Sean McCrae called Why Kids Procrastinate and How to Help. And he suggests using concrete directions rather than abstract or general ones, especially for our younger learners who are really still concrete thinkers. So you want to be specific. So say, for instance, it's time for homework. Let's start with math. That is a more concrete and specific direction than just saying it's time for homework, because maybe students really need to know what's my starting place. Multi-step directions can really be challenging, especially for our younger kids. For example, maybe you're in a hurry, you're trying to get dinner on the table and things. So you might say to your child, listen, please go put your homework in your backpack, then let the dog out, and then go wash your hands for dinner. We're about to sit down to eat. So you may end up with the homework in the backpack, but the dog is still sitting by the door to go out, and your kid shows up at the dinner table with dirt all over their hands. So a better idea might be that you say, we will be eating dinner soon. Please put your homework in your backpack and then come back and see me, and I'll tell you what to do next. So you have framed, the objective that you are working towards, sitting down at dinner, and then you've given that one task, and then they'll come back and get another. So once you know your child's limits, then you can use that as a guide about giving them effective instructions so that everybody feels satisfied and things get completed and you're not left feeling frustrated. Michelle?
Thank you. All right, we're going to talk about tackling that homework, and we have another engagement question for you. Just let us know what your best tip is on helping your child get their homework started. Is there anything that you do to help them, get settled into that? I will tell you that for our kids, they were involved in extracurricular activities after school. So honestly, their time was managed for them. It was actually harder when they went to college because they didn't have their time as structured. So I don't know, is there anything that you do that helps? And you can put that in as we go along, but procrastination on homework is, of course, one of the most common things that we see as parents. So they might do it again because they don't understand the concept or the directions, or they just don't grasp what the teacher is asking them to do. Our military connected children, as we mentioned, we know we move a lot, and that can cause learning gaps from one school to the next. So it's not even their fault, right? It can be a completely different curriculum. Sometimes they even use different language for the same thing. So our kids are just, needing a little bit of clarification. Sometimes they'll, again, procrastinate as a coping mechanism if they are struggling after a new school. Especially if, in the last school they were at, they were a pretty good student and they never had to study or struggle. And now they're finding themselves struggling and they're not dealing with it very well. So explain that that's okay. They may need a little help catching up. And they could do things like ask the teacher for help or resources. We also have some excellent resources for you. Khan Academy, that's free to everyone. They're just wonderful. I can tell you they helped our kids get through high school math. Tutor.com is also great for homework assignments for our military qualified people. So both of those are great if you're just needing a little bit more help with studying. Sometimes we can do things as parents to help our kids stay focused. One of the things we can do, of course, is by helping to minimize the distractions. A lot of kids are I would say most, unable to concentrate with the TV on, for example. So if you have the younger kids, even having those toys nearby, is kind of pulling them in that direction. Our older kids, you want to try to watch and see that they have some of those extra browsers closed, unless it's something that they're working on. It's too easy to just go back into one of those games or social media. It's a good idea for some kids to use those noise canceling headphones. Sometimes you can't block it all out, right? But that's a great idea and a good way to do it. I would say my kids did that and they actually listened to music. That may not be good for everyone, but I think that is something that you can listen to music sometimes and not be distracted to do homework. Talking about those browsers, does anybody use a website blocker or an app to help your kids stay focused? And I would tell you, I did not use one for ours. I think that was still kind of newer when they were at that age. But parental controls like Net Nanny allow parents to block some websites from being used. And Marie, thank you, has put a list of some ideas and where to go to searching for more ideas on those blockers. So I mentioned earlier that our kids had a routine homework time because they had a routine day. Came home from school, did their extracurricular, and then they did their homework. So establishing routines are actually a wonderful way to help avoid procrastination. And not just in homework, right? Having that regular bedtime routine, eat dinner, have a bath, brush your teeth, bedtime, maybe reading a book, taking out the trash. During that homework, all, at those predetermined times and locations are great examples of just routine everyday tasks. So having those routines also provides our kids an opportunity to experience success in what they're doing. They feel good about knowing what and when to do things and getting it done without even being reminded. They just know it's routine. So you can see how that can promote self-confidence and self-control. Just what wasn't around when my kids had to put it away. Thanks. Routines also establish predictability and consistency. So, along with helping with avoiding what we're talking about today, it also helps them know what to expect over time, can form that habit. So when your kids are home, try and have a routine time for lunch, for snacks, and then as age appropriate breaks. So we all know, especially during moves, that you have those days when those routines are not going to be there, but just do your best with them whenever possible. And when you get to that new location, try to get back into those routines as quickly as possible. Our younger kids are going to need more breaks than our older kids, but all of our kids will benefit from structure, routine, even if they might try to resist it a little bit. So along with those routines, it's a great idea for our kids to use a schedule or a chart. A schedule or a planner in school can help serve as a great reminder of what it is they're supposed to be doing and when to do it. So show them how to use a planner, how to fill it out, when there's due date for a project, when to have it completed, have them incorporate those deadlines into their to-do list. Otherwise, things may get moved on to the next day. So setting deadlines and working within that time frame is an essential skill that kids need to master, not only for school, but for life, right? Knowing when you need to get something done by a certain time. But we want to remember to strive for balance too. Today, kids spend a lot of time on our screens, even little ones. So make sure that your children are engaged in screen-free activities and have that time to relax and just play. Try to create that schedule that works best for your individual child's needs. If their schedule is too busy, I will tell you that children tend to procrastinate because they really just want some downtime. So working with your child to how to make their day simpler, perhaps by removing some of those activities to create more free time, may help it with that procrastination. And Marie's going to work on organization.
That's right. Another strategy to help them avoid procrastination is being organized. And so we talked about that organization piece as an executive function skill. So some children might need more support and more scaffolding in this area, but learning to be organized is an essential lifelong skill. So making sure that everything has a place and that there is a place for everything. And one way to do this is to have sort of a communication center at your home for schedules, assignments, due dates, utilizing that calendar, keeping usernames and passwords for all of those virtual platforms at your center, or keeping them in a folder on your child's computer. I was sharing with Michelle, I just got new phones and was transferring information, and I had relied on my phone to store all those passwords. And so now I'm trying to find them and reestablish that. So that is a good strategy to keep those passwords somewhere all together. If children are sharing the same computer, create maybe different profiles and usernames, so when they log in, they only see their work. They don't have to close out other windows or other things in order to get where they need to be, because that can be distracting and throw them off track. A homework box is another great resource. It keeps your child from looking for materials, getting distracted. So you can just put, plastic box or a shoe box, whatever you have, those standard items that kids might need every day for homework. You can check that supply list at school, but pencils, pens, or ruler, just so they're not constantly getting up and looking for those things, is really helpful. I would tell you one of the best investments I made was an electric pencil sharpener, and having that at the homework station, because if a child can spend half an hour sharpening a pencil, then they will. So the electric pencil sharpener eliminated that distraction for us. And then if you're having your kids work at the kitchen table, you can put all that stuff in the homework box and quickly move it aside and get things ready for dinner there and pull it out the next day when you need it. We also, another strategy is to try chunking. One of the reasons we mentioned earlier is that children procrastinate when they're feeling overwhelmed. So if you can try to chunk those tasks or maybe that information for them, it really helps. So breaking those tasks, projects, assignments, essays into manageable chunks so they don't feel like they have to complete everything all at once. This strategy works really well, especially for kids who put off doing those tasks because all they see is that big elephant in front of them, that big essay or that big project. So it seems so overwhelming that they don't even know or want to get started on it. So you can get out a piece of paper and write down everything that must be done for that project. So sit down together and then prioritize. Depending on the project, you might even want to use a calendar. Think about what needs to be done first and then next. Set deadlines for when those projects need to be completed. And we have a great webinar on that. I'm going to put the reference on time management. And we talk a lot about that with backward planning and chunking those due dates and leaving some time there to get things accomplished. So that might be helpful. Another strategy is to help your child set some goals. Even setting mini goals can really help them to get used to the idea of planning and then following through and having the satisfaction of completing a task. You can model this skill by showing kids how to handle having a due date or a specific time to complete a task. Cooking dinner together is a great way to model this behavior, right? We know that there's lots of things going on the stove, and if by magic they all get done at the same time, and so you get that completed dinner on the table. But sitting with your child, maybe pick out a recipe together and talk about, okay, well, what do we need to do first? If we're making spaghetti and red sauce and garlic bread, what do we need to do first? Well, you need to put the water on to boil, right? And then you can work through that process and cook the meal together, and then cross off those tasks, those smaller tasks as you go along. And then this idea can also be applied to other areas of your child's life. Having a goal visible is also helpful. If you have it maybe on that communication center, maybe you have a whiteboard or you can create a poster. Sticky notes are also great, and you can move those sticky notes from the to-do column to the working on column to the completed column. There is another method called the Kanban method. It's a Japanese method to help reaching goals and staying organized, and it can help you to be motivated to see the movement of that sticky note. I am still a paper and pencil calendar person, and so having a to-do list and crossing those off is immensely satisfying for me. So it might be for your kids as well. You can also use those computer or phone apps to do this. You can help set reminders to stay on track. Some good apps to utilize for younger kids is Bear, B-E-A-R, in Mind. And for older kids and teens, they can check out Remember the Milk, Finish, and Evernote are all great ones. And then we put those in the chat box, and Michelle put those in the chat box for you. So those are great ones to check out. And then always remember when you have a project or something that you need to complete or have a deadline to leave some cushion time before that goal or that project needs to be turned in. And this is because of Murphy's Law, right? We all know that the most inconvenient time, that's when things can go wrong. You're about to print and then you run out of ink. Or something on the project list was accidentally left off and you really need this in order to complete the diorama, and it's 9 o'clock the day before it's due and Walmart just closed. So if you leave some cushion time for those unexpected occurrences, it's going to lower everybody's stress level. And remember that life happens, so be prepared and be flexible. And it's a really good strategy and lifelong strategy for your kids to learn that, to leave themselves a little bit of that cushion time. So Michelle's going to talk about accountability.
Thank you. Yeah, so we talked about consequence a little bit before too. So if your child doesn't do a chore or responsibility that was agreed upon, that is maybe in their routine, be sure to follow up with those consequences. So the best practice for consequences is actually to discuss beforehand with your children what those consequences will be if that task is not completed. Even better, you could help them decide what those consequences would be, something that you agree upon, mutually. That gives them more of a buy-in when it comes to follow through in the event that you have to, follow through with that consequence. I will say understood.org recommends, however, not going overboard when it comes to giving consequences for missed chores or something. So 1 month of being grounded, maybe a little overboard for not putting the dishes away at the end of the day. So, make it realistic. But whenever possible, it's really best to use those natural consequences. So if your child chooses not to do the homework, or they don't spend time studying, they're on their Xbox or something, and they just forget that they had to study, let your child fail. And I know it's so hard for us, but one of the things we can remember is we see fail as an acronym for first attempt in learning. So it's a lot easier for our kids to learn those consequences of procrastinating now while they're young, when the outcome isn't quite as harsh, or when they're a little bit older, or maybe out in the real world working. So we want our children to be responsible for their own actions and not to blame others. For example, when we want them to understand that there's a reason that they have a 0 on their assignment, and it wasn't because they didn't turn it in. Not because they didn't turn it in. It wasn't because the teacher wouldn't give me more time. So that 0 was a consequence of not turning it in. So again, avoid overreacting. What's done is done. Help your child to work through what could be done next time to avoid procrastination and to maybe get that work in on time. The next thing we talk about is eating the frog. So what is the frog? Many you may know already, but those are those tasks that are just difficult for everyone, adults and children, to get motivated to start or to finish. So it's a task that we do not like to do. That's our frog. So recognizing that we all have tasks that we don't like to do, it's best to eat the frog first. So do those hardest or the most dreaded tasks first before you devote time to the other tasks. So we'd love to know, think about it, and share in the chat box, what's your frog? And you may have more than one, but what would be maybe one frog that you had today? And I will tell you that clean the bathrooms, yeah, no one likes to do that. Actually, I have my one frog every day is deciding what to make for dinner. And I know once that decision is done, I can move on and think about other things, but it's kind of always in the back of my head, and it's that frog in there. So it's a great thing to help our kids figure out what their frog is. Maybe encourage them to create a to-do list or keep a chart, and what are the things that on that to-do list, on that chart, that are their frog. Going to the gym, oh yeah, that's so good at the end, but so hard to get there. So help your kids identify what it is that they like to do least on that list, and explain to them, yeah, once you get that out of the way, then everything else, kind of be on the downhill. After you eat that frog, everything else will seem easier. And we all get a boost knowing that that most difficult task is done. Those bathrooms are cleaned, you've gone to the gym, right? You feel better for the rest of the day. So if you don't have it, or they don't have a big frog that day, just have them get started with an easier task. Sometimes making your bed is a great example. Make your bed in the morning, have that one task done. So for students, maybe suggest they do the quick and easy or their favorite subject first to help them get started. And you can cross that off your list and feel good and keep going. Reframing is looking at the same situation from a different perspective, right? Changing your attitude, the way you think about it, the way you look about it, the same situation. So we want to watch for your negative self-talk. We reframe it. So instead of saying, oh, I'll never get this project done, try, I can get this project done if I break it up into manageable tasks and work on it step by step. So doing this helps motivate and builds confidence in our kids. They can do it. For the smaller tasks, just help them think that they're about the positive reasons that there are to complete it now. A good one is just to get it out of the way, just to get it done. And once they get it done, they'll feel better about themselves. So here's an idea that we actually do in our house. Write a motivation list with positive phrases and then put it in some prominent place in your house, maybe on the refrigerator or in that little study area that you've created. Examples of, like, you put things like, I can do this, make it happen. When I'm done with this, I can do something fun. And then I watched this thing the other day on my Facebook feed, and it was all about procrastination. And the guy, his phrase was, do it now, do it now. So that's a really quick and easy one, right? But our kids wrote things on the bathroom mirrors for each other. They shared, they had like a Jack and Jill. So sometimes they would write smile or have a good day, or if they knew that they had a test that day, they would say, you got this to each other. So they use those markers that you can write on the car windows, so it comes off easily, but really was a cute idea. So those are kind of motivators, right? Let's talk about different kinds of motivators. Ultimately, those intrinsic motivators are the most powerful. Intrinsic motivators are those that come from inside. We feel the reward in intrinsic motivation. So as our kids develop, they learn that completing tasks, getting them done, carry their own intrinsic motivation, that feeling of accomplishment, pride, and confidence. Those extrinsic awards, they can be helpful too. Things like stickers or maybe choosing what's for dinner. But just be careful when choosing them, deliberately not using them as a bribe, right? But as a reward. Consider intangible rewards like acknowledgments and praising their efforts. Remember to reward your child whenever they're making that good progress. So knowing that there's a reward at the end can motivate and increase their productivity. So if you do think about extrinsic rewards, find something that will motivate them. Your praise, their grade, their knowledge gain, or stickers, or choosing what's for dinner. So when creating those extrinsic rewards for our older kids, talk about what they would like. So maybe create that reward list together, and after completing their task or reaching their goal, they can choose something from their list. Something like hanging out with their friends, going to the movies or something like that. But be careful to use those extrinsic rewards, because extrinsic motivation may only exist as long as there are those rewards for work. So they may become expected. We really want them ultimately to have those intrinsic motivation. And then the last tip is especially for our kids who are easily bored. How about trying something different during the same task to make it a little interesting? So think about what keeps your child absorbed. Be creative. Things like maybe going outside in the nice weather to do their homework. Have your child show or teach the family what they learned. That's a great way for them to learn as well, right? To make it stick. Make a game out of learning those spelling words instead of just having them, rewrite them over and over again. Pinterest has many, many ideas to help find ways to learn, not just like spelling words, but also math. I did see one really cute sight word game with sight word bingo, which is like a great idea, for learning just those sight words that all of our kids have to learn in the beginning. So as we come to the end of our content, let's just look at some of our objectives again. We recognize some of those common reasons for procrastination. We explored how to help them stop procrastinating or limit it. And then we shared tips to keep your child motivated. Understand that not all strategies will work for every child, not even in the same family. But we do hope that you take away some methods today that you can use in your home to help your child reduce procrastination and increase that productivity and ultimately increase their love of learning. I'm giving it back to Marie.
Awesome. Thanks, Michelle. Thank you all for joining us for the webinar today. So we would like to invite you to take our survey, and you can do that by clicking on the link on the screen. We're going to put that in the chat box. You can also scan that QR code, and that will take you quickly to your survey. Once you're in the survey, you want to click on webinar survey, and then you will need that 4-digit code, 4325, and then be sure to hit submit at the end of the survey. If you don't fill it out now, don't worry. You will receive an email invitation to complete it as well. We do utilize this tool to make ongoing improvements to our webinars, to let our funders know what we're doing and add additional topics of interest. And so we really do appreciate the 2 to 3 minutes it will take you to complete that. Another great resource for keeping everybody on track is SchoolQuest. It's an online interactive tool specially designed for our highly mobile military families and students. It has lots of great resources. Some are listed there on the slides, individual trackers, searches, checklists, and it will help students to achieve academic well-being and achieve academic success and well-being. You can sign up today. It is free, so I encourage you to check that out. If you have specific questions or concerns or education-related issues about your military child, our military student consultants, our MSCs, are the premier source to provide you with one-on-one help for all of your questions. To contact Mark or Terry, our military student consultants, you can email them at msc@militarychild.org or scan that QR code. And they do really try to get back to you within 24 to 48 hours. They're a terrific resource. The Well-Being Toolkit was developed for parents, school professionals, behavioral mental health professionals, community leaders. It's a wonderful tool full of resources on all aspects of the military connected child's well-being. We would love for you to explore it on our website and share it with others. And you can use the link or that QR code there to find out more information. If you did miss one of our previous webinars or you'd like to share this session, the recordings of our webinars can be found at our website, militarychild.org. And we are also on YouTube. And Michelle has put the links to our YouTube on there as well. So GTS is coming up, our Global Training Summit. Don't miss this fantastic opportunity, especially for our MSEC student-to-student teams and all other peer student teams from around the world. Allows them to network and collaborate with each other at our Global Training Summit in DC. We also have a wonderful variety of speakers that are there. It's a terrific 2-day summit, and you can find more information about it. Washington, DC is the location, and you can find that using that QR code or on our website. MSEC is also honored to partner with the Columbia Southern University to provide the Military Child Education Coalition Heroic Heart Scholarship to a member of the military caregiving population. So caregiving youth or children and young adults up to age 18 who are actively involved in caring for their family member who has been impacted or wounded or ill or have been injured in the line of duty. So MSEC supports all of our military connected children, and this scholarship recipient may have the opportunity to receive it in person at our Global Training Summit this summer in Washington, DC. The particulars and the criteria for this scholarship are found using that QR code, as well as the link Michelle has put in the chat box. The MSEC call for the arts program invites military connected children from all over the world, representing all branches of service, to share interpretations through art of what it means to be a military connected child. The deadline is fast approaching, April 30th. For more information, scan that QR code or click the link in the chat as well. We are excited to announce that we have webinars presented specifically for our Spanish-speaking military community members. You can join Mariela and Yasmina at the end of each month for these special webinars presented. If they're funded by HAB, and they are also beginning at noon Eastern Standard Time. And the next one is this Thursday, March 27th, on Essentials to Home Education. In partnership with Lockheed Martin Space, MSEC shines a light on STEM careers through a series of 5 one-hour virtual sessions on a variety of topics: agriculture, health, business administration, cybersecurity, engineering. The next one is next Monday, March 31st, from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so a little bit later in the afternoon. It is on engineering. We have a terrific speaker and a wonderful student who is planning on majoring in engineering when she goes to college next year. So we'd love for you to join us for that one. And then we have 2 more. April 28th is business administration, and May 12th is health sciences. If you are interested in obtaining a certificate of completion, please complete that online survey, and you can also email research@militarychild.org. We have 2 webinars coming up. On March 26th, tomorrow, is Learning Through Play, and then April 1st will be Screen Time Trends and Tips, and we have put the links to register for both of those in the chat box. And again, they all start at 12 noon. And we would like to thank all of you, and a special thanks to the Navy Child and Youth Programs for making today's webinar possible. And we appreciate your interest and participation. Michelle and I will stay on if you have any questions or if there's anything else. Please be sure to download that resource before you leave. And thank you all for joining us, and have a great afternoon.